I feel in the face of all the problems in the world impotent, and why I somehow cannot manage to transform I. Now here we get to the real problem, because we're always telling each other that we should be different. Now, I'm not going to tell you that tonight. Why not? Because I know you can't. Nor can I. That may sound depressing, but I'll tell you it isn't. It's very hard. But everybody, you see, who is at all sensitive and awake to their own problems and human problems is trying to change himself. We know we can't change the world unless we change ourselves. So when we are aware of the ego I, we are aware of this chronic tension inside ourselves. And that's not us. It's a futile tension. So when we get the illusion, the image of ourselves, married to a futile tension, you've got an illusion married to a futility. And then you wonder why I can't do anything.
Okay, good morning everybody. Thank you for tuning in to today's video. Let's actually talk about Bitcoin's apparent compressionary cycle and hopefully what we can determine looking at our mean reversion pivots, because hopefully they formed under higher time frames. So with that out of the way, let's define our longest overexpanded periods. Right. Currently, our longest overexpanded period here on the 1 hour chart is the 220 band. We will trade laterally as defined by that 220 period, which I will now define, right? Because the 1.25 standard deviation is the pivot point for expansion and compression of any distributional period. And by looking at the period with the longest, or rather the longest period with excessive distributional width, we can determine which period in theory, and actually in practice, I'll say that too, will define the compressing price, or rather preemptively define what values the bull or bear flag shall pivot around. So currently it's this band here. Price will not leave this band without the application of excessive force, and that's very important to say, right? Excessive force. It is more probable for price to be contained by this compressing range than if it were to trend outside. Why? Because it's like a truck rolling down a hill. Once you have that condition active, you expect it to reach the bottom of the hill. Now, it is possible for Hercules to materialize in the middle of the hill, stop the car while it's rolling, and push it back up to the top, but it's just simply not as probable. Occam's razor. Not really Occam's razor. It's not, well, it is technically the simplest solution. But just bet on what's more probable. It's logical. It's more logical that the car will reach the bottom of the hill, or in this case, it's more logical that we will see this band fully compressed to a state of potential energy before it starts being pushed back up the hill. So, and I kind of want to work on that analogy because saying up or down is directional, and What I'm actually referring to is expansion or compression, right? Up and down actually isn't a direction. It's whether or not the band is contracting or getting wider. So, let's talk about what we're actually looking for on, say, the macro time frames. Now, we want states of potential energy in the market, right? You have high potential energy that results in significant trend, and well, if you get significant trend, you make, oh, I don't know, 600% on a long position, right? High states of potential energy are really, really good. Why? Because they result in significant trend. So, when was the last time we had a period of significant compression, right? Wave PM and 3D wave PM sort Bollinger Band's squeezes and expansions into metrics, definable variables. So if we take a look at wave PM, and we have all our variables below the 0.7 value, or to say a high state of potential energy, well, once you actually have all your CCI periods weighted to the same side, and trend, or at least the beginning of trend, you can bet that the continued expansion, well, will just do that, continue. Until what happens? Well, until it returns to a state of low potential energy, because there's too much distributional width, or in terms, because there is too much mass. And if there's too much mass, then it would require an unrealistic amount of force to move. In other words, Hercules. So, because we can define the metric of required force, or the probability of sufficient force, we can look at this right here and say, wow, there is a very low potential of potential, or rather low potential of force and low potential energy. So, with that in mind, just as we saw a significant downtrend here after the state of high potential energy, which is represented by blues and greens on the 3D wave PM, we see a compressionary period, right? The expansion, the trend turns red because the distributional widths overexpand. And then, once lateral trading begins, once the bear flag forms, and I know, it's a pretty great bear flag, it definitely was bearish. Once that forms, periods of increasing length enter the compressionary period. Okay? The shorter the period, the faster it compresses. So if we look at 3D wave PM, it just intuitively makes sense that, say, the 14 period is going to compress far faster and return to a state of potential energy faster than, say, the 50 period or the 200 period. You'll notice that the higher the period, the longer it takes to restore itself to a state of high potential energy, right? Like, look at this. This is what we call volatility overhead, okay? So this huge bull run generated a lot of mass. It actually maxes out 3D wave PM, and the value of overall expansion is so high, it can't even be read on 3D wave PM, which is insane, right? Because there's just not enough candles to actually look back that far if we increased the resolution on a higher time frame. So what do we see? We see the compression of our shorter term periods, which is represented by the radiating green and blue in these lower periods, right? Because every time it turns green, it goes below the 0.7 value and is technically in a state of potential energy. So, when we have all this overexpansion from the previous bull run, and we're seeing it slowly radiate upwards and restoring itself to a state of potential energy, what happens when all your periods are in a state of potential energy? Again, it results in significant trend. And let's actually look at the BLX chart on the weekly so we can just see where our volatility overhead is at. Right? This is actually really cool. So you'll notice that all this mass generation is a huge overexpansion. And, well, what do we have here? all our values are turning green. And what does it mean when our values turn green? Well, it means those periods are in a state of potential energy. And we can trend with relative certainty as defined by those periods. Goodness gracious. So, with this in mind, if we say, look at the 4-hour chart, we can wait for 3D Wave PM to load. There it is. Take a look at our longest over expanded period. Now, let's take a look at the previous longest over expanded period, right? Look at this plume of mass. What followed this huge generation of distributional width? Well, a flag, a long period of compression, where all these periods returned themselves to a state of potential energy. Because when you return to a state of potential energy, well, then it can result in significant trend. And now, because we have generated excessive mass, and we have signs of compression, this is actually pretty cool. Take a look at this. So we actually started to get compression on lower time frames with this little bit of green right here. But then it turns red again. Why? Because the shorter periods are actually technically in a state of downward expansion, downward trend. Because those shorter periods returned to the below the 0.7 value to a state of potential energy. And, you know, let's actually load it up. Let's take a look at the 20 period. Okay? So if I turn this to 20, guess what we're going to be able to see? You're going to love this. So we generated excessive distributional width on this upward move as defined by the 20 period. But what happens if price enters it and trades laterally so the band can compress? Well, it returns to a state of potential energy. And if you have a state of potential energy as defined by the 20 period, when you get downward expansion as defined by the 20 period, it results in significant downward trend. This is what we call trending mean reversion over lateral mean reversion, right? Where there's downward expansion to the previous longest over expanded period instead of a lateral move, right? Because you can get these long periods of compression, which is just lateral mean reversion where the mean travels up to meet price. Or we can get downward expansion to the longest over expanded period. But it's important to note, we can actually define how far we can expand to the downside by looking at, you guessed it, the volatility overhead, which in this instance is still forming. So, with this beautiful piece of information in mind, well, we need to look at the mean reversion pivot of the 220 period. Is this the 220 period? It's kind of cool how on the 1 hour shorter term mass generation, it's the same period as, say, the 4 hour, right? Because the macro resolution is fewer data points. So, what we have here, 220 period is a longest over expanded, which means if we re-enter this pivot of the 1.25 standard deviation, guess what we're going to look at? If we re-enter that band, it means we will either have trending mean reversion to the 220 mean or lateral mean reversion, where price goes sideways and the mean travels up to meet price. Technically, as defined by the 4-hour chart, Bitcoin is still in a state of upward trend. We are still technically in a state of expansion. Now, what's really, really important to note is when we return to a state of compression, what's going to happen? What would a state of compression mean for us? Well, it would mean trend is over, as the market restores itself to a state of potential energy. That's the beauty of this, guys. So if we enter this band, and we have a nice red candle close inside the band, we can pretty reliably predict that we're going to compress for the duration. It's beautiful. Until then, you can actually do like a pretty safe long here, right? Because if you have this nice, well-defined pivot, and you long here, and trend is sustained, that'll be very profitable. But if we return inside this band, that's going to result in significant downtrend or lateral movement. And these pivots are very well defined and very reliable. And I'm actually going to draw this pivot in here, like, that's not good. Try again. I want it to be as accurate as possible. Okay, good enough. So, we have this mean reversion pivot here, but we also have our shorter term mesh generation on the 1 hour chart as well. Oh, look how clean that is. Okay. So guess what we're going to look at? Load, my boy. 3D WavePM is 32 indicators and 1 indicator, so it's kind of slow. Right, 220 periods are longest over expanded period. And now we're getting lateral trading as defined by this. So that means we would not expect price to go up above this value here. So what does that mean for us? Well, we have a very nice defined range which to trade with now. We know price won't go above this value, and we know price, well, we can long at this value and short, not values, they're pivots, right, because they're dynamic. So we can long at this pivot and short at this pivot pretty reliably. And I would recommend waiting for CCI rolls on each side just for safety's sake. And you can actually use 1/10 of that period for a nice relative CCI roll. So we can rather safely, I'll say it one last time, long here and stop out below. These are going to be great profit ratios. Let's just draw them out. All right, if we long here, you can stop out below the band at, say, 3%, and our upside is going to be 13%. We'll conservatively say 13. And if we touch the top edge of the band, like so, we can short here at the top edge and keep that open until the bottom pivot. And I do think the mean reversion pivot's going to break eventually, so you can actually even drag that take profit all the way down to, say, that 220 mean on the 4 hour, which is going to be here. So would you like a 22-to-1 profit ratio? I certainly would. I would really like that nice upward retrace because it'll provide a really good entry into a short. Okay? And I'm probably just going to make this official here. These two positions. They're really clean. Alright, and then we can actually enter a third position, where if price does in fact re-enter this pivot here, right, that'll just activate the bearish condition immediately. And then when we get a 22 period CCI roll down on, say, here, the 4 hour chart, that's also going to be a short entry. So we actually have 3 potential positions here, which is really good news. Because I consider all of them pretty high probability. Not in the sense that they're guaranteed to hit, but in the sense that the pivots will be very well respected, right? If you long here, it might go down and you might stop out, but the resulting scenario from that loss is going to be very high probability, right? So if you long here, but you stop out, price will continue trending down to the 220 moving average on the 4 hour chart, right? So this pivot here is probably 50-50. However, once the pivot is crossed, the chances of it staying inside the pivot are about 90-10. And the top edge of, say, the 220 band on the 1 hour chart, this here, that's also going to be super well defined. And I don't think, I did not say, hey Siri, stop. Forgot I had that on. Anyway. If we test the top edge of the band, that's going to be a great short up too. But again, CCI rolls are a lot safer than just trying to use them as static resistance values. So, long here, short here, and get the full retrace. We'll see what happens. Because in order for trend continuation to happen on the 1 hour chart, let me just point this out. We need to stay above this pivot. And the thing about this pivot is it's constantly increasing all the time. Right? Every candle close, this pivot of mean reversion is going to get higher. That's super important to understand. So, in order for trend continuation on Bitcoin to happen, the following needs to occur. Price needs to stay above the pivot on the 4 hour chart. And then this period here, the 22, needs to return below the 0.7 value. So we can actually visualize that on just regular wave PM as well. Just change that to 220. Watch this. So this purple line right here needs to go below this 0.7 value. Trend cannot continue until that happens. Okay? I have a pretty good way of proving that. Okay, let's just look at the blue line. Every time the blue line goes in the red, it will not return to the red until it goes below the 0.7 value. Right? And I'm just going to repeatedly draw this. Once. Twice. 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. 6 times. 7 times. Oh yeah, I can hold shift and scroll. I never knew that. It's pretty cool. Ooh, that one just barely succeeded. Look at that. It's clean. Anyway, I'm out of time, but I'm pretty sure I made my point clear. The point is, we need to compress before either trend can continue. And I think we're going to see like 3 months of compression. It's been a pleasure. I'll talk to you TradingView folks later. Nice. It's a great live stream today, if I do so say myself. So what do we have here today? Let's check the comments. Snake says, I'm digging the background music. Reminds me of Zanzibar. Wrote it myself, dude. I based it off of Marconi Union's song known as Weightless. Same 4/4 kick and then a wandering melody that never repeats, so there's nothing for your brain to hold on to. The point of writing it was just a song you can listen to over and over again without any concern. Also, get your altcoin questions in. I'd love to see what you want of me. Do you think we'll get down to 5,300? If the mean inversion pivot is crossed, sure. But, of course, it's yeah, totally. If we cross the pivot, it'll happen. Alright, so if we actually enter the pivot like this, we'll probably do something like that, where we just compress for months and months and months. And then we'll have a bull run. That'd be pretty nice. Wabi and B&B. Come again. What's the name of that song? Weightless by Marconi Union. And I just got sunscreen in my eye. God damn it. Yeah, let's check out BNB. It's been a while since I looked at that chart, to be honest. Like, in depth, at least. Ooh. I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty good short. So the mass generation is super choppy. Okay, now there's actually a brief long we can do here because of this downward expansion that I missed. 350 period, okay? Actually, we might be able to long this still. Hold on. Watch this. 350. Actually, yeah, this long condition actually just triggered. So we can expect price to return to, wow, 10%. That's good. That's really good. Yeah, we can expect a 10% mean reversion. I'm going to have to do two. Well, So the problem with this is you're going to have to buffer your buys because CCI rolls are still probable for trend reentry. So I'm just going to draw it out like this. Just one there, and then we're going to turn this dark blue. Trend reentry there. And kind of like a soft stop loss at this location. Red. Move scale to left. I'm just going to call it. Who cares? Publish. Because it looks good, right? 35 period CCI roll for entry is preferable. BNB trade call. And I'm just going to copy and paste the template from the straight call, which I'm pretty sure failed, right? Like here we also had the defined mean reversion pivot and it held, like it was correct. I just overestimated the, oh, never mind. That was actually a winning trade call. I thought it lost. Huh. Okay, well that's 9% for you guys. Very nice. I totally thought that stopped out. I didn't know that wick happened. Cool. I'm very happy about that. I kind of just fire and forget on my trade calls. Right? I automate it, so I set the take profits at the stop loss. I enter the trade, and then I just don't check it anymore. I don't even care. That's the best way to trade, guys. Just completely emotionless. 3279 to 3529. 3529. I wish I could use my numpad, but it's where I keep all my live stream hotkeys. So I'll probably like switch the screen 10 times if I try to do that. 3165. Take profits are gonna be 3828, comma 3699, and expected call duration 2 days to 1 week is actually correct. Risk levels only medium. Call strength is also only medium. Category, trend analysis, private, long. Publish. Cool. So you guys got that one for free. Okay, let's check the comments. Can you please have a quick look at VIX and KCS? Been a while since I heard those ones. Didn't I already publish this? It's pretty bizarre. Okay. Since I don't have the time to actually, I'm just gonna drop it in chat. Okay. I don't remember what you asked me. BNT. Oh god, that's ugly as hell. That's really weird. Yeah, higher resolution fixes it, but I still don't like it. The pivot is 140. No, it's just still technically in a downtrend. Sorry. Okay, watch. no. Believe it or not, price still needs to go up another 10% before I would consider out of the downtrend. And since you can't short that anywhere, PPT is still dead. Maybe. Check it out. Yep. Active downtrend. A lot of mass generation. Mean reversion pivots miles away. Lit. I don't know if I can chart lit. Can I? Lydion? Nah. I can only do trading view charts because that's the only place I can use my indicators. JNT. I don't think that one's available either, but we'll check out Bix. Cool. Huobi. Might be able to find a mean reversion pivot here, but I wouldn't consider it too likely. Oh god, that looks so cool. Where we just had this flat trading for a long time, so it was just nothing but compression. Kind of breaks the indicator and it looks cool. Anyway, no, this has been a sustained downtrend and there was no generated mass because of its consistency. So I can't call anything there. Check out Nano. Ooh, Thunder. It's pretty scrawny, but we can still do it. 220 again. Another activation of the condition. This one's 20% away. This is a pretty good chart too. Yeah, you can also long this if you want. Because the condition's active, but there's no signal yet. So price might decide to do this. And the mean travels down to meet price. That's totally an option. Or price could just immediately go to the mean. I can't say. There's implied upward expansion here on the shorter periods. It's possible, but I might call it. It looks good. And I'm just going to check one last time because I actually have lunch plans. It's been a pleasure talking to you all today. Okay. Looks like it's it. It's been a pleasure, folks. I will see you all tomorrow at 1 p.m. MST. I'll talk to you all later. Have a good one, guys.